Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. I'm Coral. I don't know why I'm pointing at you. I'm here today with a kind of a list that I've compiled of some of my favorite books I've read so far this year. Not all of them. I think actually only one of them is a 2020 release. I think. I don't know. What is time anymore? I know for sure one of them is. I don't think that any of the others are. But I'm here with them, and I'd like to tell you about them, especially because I don't know, well, it's been kind of a rough time for reading, a rough time for doing anything lately because of, you know, the state of the world, and also just like, I think a lot of people, I mean myself included, hit kind of like a mid-year slump where it's just kind of lose your motivation. Maybe you really don't know what to read. So I'm here with some books that I thought were really fantastic this year. There are 7 of them, and I'm going to tell you about The Wanderers first by Chuck Wendig, because I listened to that one on audio, and since it's not right here, I will forget about it if I don't talk about it first. So, Wanderers by Chuck Wendig. This came out in 2019, so I think only one on my list is 2020, but I don't think that really matters. Man, The Wanderers was such a ride. It is a thick book. It is just, I don't even know how to explain what goes on in this book. It's kind of like a sci-fi apocalyptic thriller, I would say. It really spans across a lot of genres. There is a lot of shit going on in this book. So it is action-packed, and there's just constantly new things for you to think about, and I loved this book a lot. I really need to buy myself a copy of it. This starts out, and this weird event happens where these people start to like kind of sleepwalk, but they're like not conscious. There's no way, like, nobody can stop them from going to where they're going. If you try to stop them, they will literally explode, like their bodies will blow up. And so like, you don't want to touch them, and some of their families start to follow them, and they call these people the shepherds, the people who are, you know, following them and protecting the flock from people who are trying to stop them. At some point people get like these weird religious ideas of what these sleepwalkers might be. So the shepherds are there to kind of protect the flock of sleepwalkers and make sure that they're okay, and just kind of like follow them to see where they're going. At the same time, this super virus starts. It's a fucking pandemic. Yeah, so it's like this weird event with the sleepwalkers, and then you have this super bug, and people are dying, and it's so crazy. There is, oh my god, there's just so many things I could tell you about the plot of this book. Maybe I should not. Maybe I should tell you less rather than too much. But Wanderers was so good, and I mean, I'm somebody who sometimes gets daunted by the size of a book, but this was a really long book that was, like I said, action-packed, and there's just always something new that I was learning when I was reading this book, and it was just really well written. The characters were great, and I really liked it so much. I wish I could experience it again for the first time. It was such a trip. The end blew my mind. It was so good. Okay, next I have The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix. I always have to look at the title because it's so fucking long and I might say it wrong. Even though it's one of my favorite books of the year. This is by Grady Hendrix. He is such a fantastic author. I will read probably anything he ever writes. But this really was just such a cute, quaint, horrible book. It starts off with our main character, Patricia, who lives in one of the Carolinas. Is that North Carolina, I think? No, South Carolina. South Carolina. Patricia, she lives in South Carolina, and she joins this book club that's kind of hoity-toity, and they're going through like some of the classics, and she just can't, like, she doesn't really have much time to read. She when she did have time to read, it was like she wasn't into these books, so she kind of flubs her way into this book club and gets really embarrassed when the leader of the book club calls her out on not reading the book. And you know, there ends up being a couple other women in that book club who are like, hey, we know what you really want to read, and it's like true crime, like 80s true crime. So it's like really 80s 90s true crime, I guess. It's kind of, you know, exploitative and stuff like that. So they make their own little book club where, you know, they're reading stuff that they really want to read, you know, things pertaining to serial killers and things like that. So she has, like, you know, a little group of friends. She is a housewife, but they live in like kind of a wealthier neighborhood. Her husband is a psychiatrist, I'm pretty sure. Let me know if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure he's a psychiatrist. So, like, despite it being a one-income household, like, they have it pretty good. She has 2 teenage kids, and, like, she's working a lot. She is a stay-at-home mom, and that is a lot of, like, chauffeuring and cooking and cleaning and kind of, like, monotonous shit. But she has her book club. But then a stranger moves in to their neighborhood, and she has a strange encounter with him, with his family member, and they meet, and she's really just kind of like attracted to him. Like, he has this weird magnetism, and she really likes him at first. But then these strange crimes keep happening, and she starts to think that maybe he is causing these crimes, and maybe he's a vampire. So that's where this book goes. It is just such a great book. I know a lot of people recently have had some issues with the way that they treated women in this book, but we have to remember that just because a character in a book says bad things, makes bad decisions, is mean to people, that doesn't necessarily mean that the author is a bad person too. Just that he writes really convincing bad characters. So I thought this was great. Such a fun book. I'm already 10 minutes into this and I've only talked about 2 books. Okay, my summaries are going to be a little shorter from here on out. This is Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. I wasn't expecting to like this as much as I did. I mean, like, I bought it because I thought I would like it, but this, like, really blew me out of the park. This is her, like, first kind of foray into more adult stuff, and I'd say this is probably paranormal more than fantasy, or I don't know. There are some kind of, like, creepy parts in this book. This is about a young woman named Alex, and she wakes up in a hospital after this crazy event happens to her where, like, her friends and her roommates are all killed. She's the only survivor, and she wakes up in the hospital, and somebody from Yale is there. And they invite her to go to Yale, and she's like, what? Because, like, she didn't do very well in school. She got into drugs and stuff like that, so she's not somebody who's, like, on track to going to such a prestigious college. But they invite her, she finds out, because she is able to see the dead. She finds out that Yale has these secret societies, and they invite her to become part of the secret society. They have different houses, and each house kind of does different stuff. But she gets invited to be a part of the house called Leigh, and they kind of guard the outside world from the other houses. Like, they kind of keep them in check, keep them in line, make sure they're not hurting anybody, doing anything they shouldn't. And yeah, I mean, that's what this book really is about. But it gets so creepy, it's so interesting. There is kind of a murder mystery going on, and you know, people don't really want to, I mean, you can imagine if you have to keep such a big secret, it's not very easy for you to find out who committed a crime, you know what I mean? Like, you can't just be like, hey, guess what? I think these people are involved because they've been turning people into werewolves, you know, stuff like that. It's really great. I loved Alex as a character, and I can't wait to see where the series goes, because this is the start to a series. And I know this a lot of people complained that the beginning was a little bit hard to get through, and I can agree, because there's just like a lot of information about things like you don't know about at first, but if you know, if you keep trucking and if you get far enough into it, it really just like zooms. It's so good and just really absorbing. Okay, next on my list is a nonfiction book. This is The Indifferent Stars Above by Daniel James Brown. This is a nonfiction book about the Donner Party, about what happened to the Donner Party. This was such a fantastic book, and really, like, the Donners and the families who were with them were like the most unlucky people I've ever heard of in my life. There's just so many moments where it's like, if they had just gone 2 miles this way, they would have been totally fine. Yeah, so this is about the Donner Party. If you are not familiar with that, they are a group of people, what year was it? 1846, and they were traveling from like the middle of the country, like mid-eastern part of the country, to California. Yes, they're traveling to California, and obviously this is like Oregon Trail shit, you know, so they leave a little bit too late in the year and get trapped in the mountains. And they're starving to death, and just a series of like really unfortunate events happen to these people. It's so good. It really follows Sarah Graves. So she's not one of the Donners, but she is part of the party who at the very beginning joins up with the Donners and, you know, ends up where they end up. But yeah, it's a lot of information in this book, but it's so well told, and if you're interested in that sort of thing, this is a great book to pick up. Next, I'd like to talk about a book that I just recently read. This is Scythe by Neal Schusterman. This is a young adult dystopian, utopian kind of a thing. Kind of a book, I guess. This is about a world where people have these like nanobots in their bodies. And these nanobots basically stop any illness. People are able to be revived after events that would normally kill them, like jumping off a building or being in a fatal car crash. So people like just don't die like we do now. And because of that, there is obviously the problem of overpopulation. So these things called scythes were invented, I guess. This idea came up, and they're basically people who are supposed to help cull the population. And there are many different ways that they do this, different methods that they use to pick who they're going to cull, and it's really interesting. So the plot of the book is, though, that these 2 teenagers get chosen to be apprentices to one of the scythes. His name is Scythe Faraday. It's almost like a competition, kind of, a little bit. I mean, they're not really competing against each other really, but they're competing for this spot as a scythe. And basically this book is about their apprenticeship and what happens, and I really like this a lot. The first time I read it, I read about 80 pages and I put it down for like 3 years, but I picked it up and I'm so glad that I did, because after I got past and it wasn't even like after I got past the first 100 pages, like it was good up until that point, but I just like wasn't digging it as much. But then the second time I picked it up, I just zoomed through it. It was like one of those books that I stayed up late at night reading, which I don't always do. So I thought this was really great, and I can't wait to see where this series goes as well. I'm starting so many fucking series and not continuing on with them. I do that all the time. What's wrong with me? Okay, 2 books left. I'd also like to tell you guys about The Institute by Stephen King. This is like his most recent novel that's come out. I think If It Bleeds was short stories, but I haven't read that one yet. I know a lot of people aren't like super big on his newer releases, and I can understand that because they do feel a lot different than, you know, things he wrote early in his career. But I really loved The Institute. This is about, what's his name? I'm so bad with names Luke. It's about a young boy named Luke, and he is so fucking smart. He is like, how old is he? Like 11, 12 years old? I don't think I know. He's like just about to be a teenager, not quite there yet. But he's so smart. He's like on track for taking college level lessons when he is like 12 years old. He also like maybe can cause things to happen with his mind, like maybe a little bit of telepathy. So he wakes up in the middle of the night one night, and there are intruders in his house, and they kill his parents and kidnap him, and they take him to this place called the Institute. And there are other kids like him at this institute, kids who not necessarily are very super smart like he is, but people who can do things and maybe read minds and stuff like that. I mean, that's the plot of this book, is he's in the Institute and they're not necessarily doing nice things to kids, and he doesn't want to be there. So it was so good. This is another book that's like really thick, but it just was so readable and approachable, and it didn't make like my brain think too hard when I was reading it. So it was just like so easy to read, and Stephen King's characters, you know, they are so good, and this is no exception, especially when he writes kids. I really do like his child characters more than I think adult characters that he writes in most cases, and Luke is no exception to that. He is so just kind-hearted, and he's just such a good kid. All these kids in here are good kids, you know? You know, it's a lot about friendship and being resilient and problem solving, and it was a great book. Okay, last but not least, this is Rest in Stardust by T. Greenwood, and this is a fictional book based on a true event. So this takes place in New Jersey in 1948, and there is a young girl named Sally Horner, and she is abducted. And man, this book was hard to get through. I don't even know where to start. Sally, she is, gosh, I have to look at these synopsises over and over. She's 11, so she's a very young girl. Not quite a teenager, but she's getting there, and she's kind of naive and innocent. This is a time in our country where, you know, a lot of people just assumed that bad things don't happen to good people, and because of that, the reason Sally is abducted, she kind of thinks that she deserves it because she had done something kind of bad when she met the person who abducted her, and there's just a lot of things going on, just like, I don't know, so many really great thinking points in this. I mean, from like the fact that her mother met the abductor and kind of like agreed to let Sally go with him and things like that. I don't know, it was just a point in our country's timeline where we didn't really understand that like bad people do bad things to whoever the fuck they want to, and you know, you can't let your kids go with strangers, and you can't trust everything that people say and stuff like that. So it's a hard read, and yeah, it's just hard, but it is so well written and great, and I got a little teary at the end. It was just, I don't know, it was rough, but it was really good. I mean, there are obviously content warnings. Obviously a man who abducts an 11-year-old girl doesn't have like good intentions, so there are sexual abuse warnings for this, definitely, you know, rape and physical abuse and stuff like that. So probably not for everybody, but really such a great, well-written book. Okay, well, that's what I have for you guys today. Thank you all so much for watching. I will have a list of these books down in the description on bookshop.org if you guys are interested in purchasing any of them. Bookshop.org helps support indie bookstores and also helps support my channel. So thank you, like I said, for watching. Let me know if you've read any of these, because I'm always curious to know what other people think about them. Like, it is so crazy how polarizing some books can be, and yeah, so I'm curious. Let me know. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you in another video soon. So until then, I guess, I will see you guys later. That's a Minnesotan goodbye for you.